and welcome to another used car heaven here on Men and Motors. This is the programme that gives you the chance, if you're looking to change your car at the moment, to come and join us each week. You tell us the sort of car that you're looking for and the budget that you have to spend, and we do the rest. We provide 3 cars for you to drive. We want your opinion, and I might even give you my opinion on those cars too. We'll meet this week's viewer very soon. Also on this week's programme, Simon Hughes, the car doctor, is back in the surgery, and Brad will have more insider tips at the trading post. But before that, we need to see who's joining us on this week's programme. This week I'm joined by Jeremy Thomas, who's 32, single and from Huddersfield. Jeremy is an IT manager at a local authority and currently drives what he describes as an old beaten-up Escort. Plus, he's got a VW camper van for the weekends as well. Now, Jeremy wants a 4x4 and he has around £9,000 to £10,000 to spend. Jeremy, thanks for joining us here on Used Car Heaven. Now, at the moment, you've got a Ford Escort.
Ford Escort.
Why has that got to go? It's
got to go because it's falling apart.
Is it?
Windscreen wipers broke on it 2 days ago.
Oh no.
It's getting to be a liability
And
now.
You've also got a VW camper van as well.
An old VW camper van, which is slightly less of a liability.
Why do you want a 4x4?
I like the high driving position of the camper van, the practicality of a 4x4. I live a little bit out in the country, so it could be useful in winter.
Is it something you would take off-road, do you think?
Not seriously, no.
Not really.
It doesn't have to be a real workhorse.
Okay, but you like the practicalities of 4x4.
Do.
Well, the 3 that we've got lined up today are all roughly in the budget. I mean, you're looking to spend about sort of £9,000 to £10,000-ish.
That's it, yes.
That sort of area. First one is this, it's the Chevy Blazer, slightly unusual, a rare sight.
Yeah.
Not many of these on the roads.
Very American.
Very American. I mean, it's not a huge American yank tank as some of them are
huge, but
it's a petrol one, this, so it is a bit thirsty.
Right.
I mean, petrol or diesel, are you bothered about that?
Not overly. I have to see how it goes.
10 grand for this, fully loaded with all the toys.
That's it, you get a lot
good
for your
value
money.
for money. Do you like the look of it?
Yes, it's quite impressed with it really. Wasn't expecting it to be quite so small. Think of American things as being big, but no, this is quite good.
That's car number 1. Have a look at the second one. And it's the Vauxhall Monterey. Now, they no longer make this model, but essentially underneath it's an Isuzu Trooper, but it's badged in the UK as a Vauxhall.
Be a good workhorse then.
It's a good workhorse. You've got Japanese reliability behind you, so it's unlikely to go wrong. And, you know, it's reasonable to service. You know, you can take it to your Vauxhall garage as well, obviously.
Easy then.
Diesel engine, very good engine, economical, 30-ish to the gallon.
That's not bad.
You're never going to get fantastic economy out of a 4x4.
Vehicle this size.
No. So, but it's got the toys on it, and it's £9 grand for this.
£9 grand, cheaper then.
I mean, first impressions?
First impressions, quite pleased with it.
Looks all right.
Yeah.
Doesn't look a bad
Very
car,
purposeful looking.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and
see what you think of number 3. And number 3 is this, Jeremy. It's the Nissan Terrano, or the Terrano 2. It's the revised model, this.
Right.
Also seen in Ford Maverick gaze as well.
Yeah, look familiar.
But, yes. But this was a bigger seller, certainly for Nissan, than the Maverick was for Ford. What do you think of it? Do you like the look of it or not?
It's a long wheelbase, which is better than the short wheelbase.
Better than the short wheelbase, yeah.
But dare I say it?
Is space a big thing for you? You've got a lot of things to cart about?
Occasionally, yes.
Occasionally, so
the ability to throw stuff in.
Okay. Two-tone paint job doesn't do it very many favours, does it?
No, bit of a hairdresser car.
Do you think so?
Yes.
It is a diesel, so it's economical.
Right.
It's the most expensive of the 3, 12 grand for this.
Right.
But we'll see whether it's worth it. Let's take it for a spin.
Okay.
Well, Jeremy, in the initial chat, you've already said that you thought this was a bit of a hairdresser's car, so we have to try and, you know, persuade you that maybe it isn't. And that it is a better car to drive. I mean, you're behind the wheel. What do you think now?
It's a good driving position, plenty of view, even out the back through the rear view mirror. So
it's a big car, actually, isn't it? I mean, you look at it. There's plenty of space in here, isn't there?
There's lots of space, especially in the back seat. So I was impressed with that.
Yeah, big boot.
Big boot, chuck your stuff in.
As usual with a lot of Japanese cars, very plasticky. I mean, on this model, this is obviously the top of the range model, and they've put this, well,
lovely piece of wood.
That's never been near a tree, I can guarantee that. What about the performance-wise of it? Obviously, it's a 2.7 diesel engine, about 120 brake horsepower with this.
Right.
Does it feel responsive?
It's not massively, not off the mark. First gear certainly seemed a bit numb,
a bit sluggish
until the turbo kicks in a little bit. You can
I don't
feel
think this
it
is one of the torquiest diesel engines around, to be perfectly honest. And for more about the Nissan Terrano, here's Chris.
This is definitely not a Discovery or Cherokee. It's well behind the class leaders on the rough terrain, but as a family 4x4, it's well worth a look. This is the Nissan Terrano. Stick it in town, fine. Tow a caravan, that's fine. Even tow a horse box, that's fine. But take it off-road, we should have a look inside. The engines on one of these range from a 2.4, a 2.7 turbo diesel, which is this, and a 3-litre diesel. And between them, they'll average 23 to 31 miles per gallon. Now the trim is quite good in one of these, but watch out, they can suffer on the 3-litre diesels if they've been put through a little bit of hard work. The drive is good, you're really up high and you've got very supportive seats. If you come across one of these that's got high mileage, check the service history. There are no real shocks with one of these, pretty comfortable to run. This is a T registration and used it will cost you £12,000.
The Nissan Terrano comes with a choice of 2.4 litre petrol or 2.7 turbo diesel engines. Insurance ranges between Group 10 and 14, and they were introduced first in 1993, revised in 1996 and again in 2000. Well, that is the Nissan Terrano, the first car for Jeremy to drive. Have you changed your opinion on it now that you've had a chance to drive it?
Not overly, no, I'm afraid.
No? You're still not mad on it?
Not mad, no. It's good visibility, pleasant driving position, but the engine wasn't overly impressed with.
It really
was.
does.
Going up those hills was a problem.
Keep changing down is not good.
No.
Not on a diesel.
Not on a big diesel. It's 2.7 diesel. You thought it had a bit of pulling power and it disappointed.
12 grand's not bad for the money though, is it?
Not bad, but I don't think I'll be spending my money there.
All right, we'll be taking the Monterey out next, but before that we need to head off to the surgery. We need to see the man we call the car doctor. He's Simon Hughes.
Today I'm in an Audi 80 and these are quite famous because they've actually given us some motor vehicle terminology which is known as Audi 80 syndrome, and this is because of the braking system. And these have got disc brakes all around, which on paper is great. However, they've got quite a cheaply made rear brake caliper which is going to give us some problems. And the problem is a cheaply made rear brake caliper assembly which is a combined foot brake and handbrake. Now basically when it gets old it doesn't work very well, and the symptoms you get as a driver are when you go to pull away, the back end of the car kind of pulls down and you can see the bodywork sort of dragging down a little bit. There's not a lot you can do about it other than replace them with new ones which cost anywhere upwards of £100 for a reconditioned one up to £200 for a brand-new. You could try, like I do suggest sometimes, operating the handbrake 1 or 2 times extra on a journey, but basically the Audi 80 syndrome is going to get you one day, so if you've got one, you better get saving.
He likes to get his hands dirty for us every week. We call him the car doctor. Simon Hughes will be back next week here on Used Car Heaven, but on this week's programme we're looking to find a new 4x4 for Jeremy. He has around £10,000 or so to spend. Driven the Nissan Terrano, but disappointed.
Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed, I'm afraid.
Well, the second car for you is this, the Vauxhall Monterey, also badged as an Isuzu Trooper as well.
Right.
Good, reliable car.
Excellent.
Looks a bit dated though, doesn't it?
A little bit square and dated, but
Let's
we'll have a
see how
go.
it drives. Let's take it out. Well, Jeremy, this is the Vauxhall Monterey, car number 2.
Yep.
Essentially the same as we already mentioned as the Isuzu Trooper. What you've got to remember about is that with this car is that, I mean, these cars were first introduced around about 10 years ago, so
they are an old vehicle.
10 to 12-year-old technology, really, at the end of the day. And it shows, doesn't it?
It does.
Big time.
It's definitely a dated-looking vehicle.
Now, we're going up this hill where the Terrano struggled again.
Yep, and this seems a lot more drivable.
Now, this is a 3.1 turbo diesel. It's got a bigger engine, and it's got 112 brake horsepower. Not quite the same, but obviously the torque and power band is a lot better in this.
It is. It delivers it a lot lower down.
It does, doesn't it?
If I had to tow something, I'd rather do it in this.
You'd rather do it in this, wouldn't you? Yeah. Okay, let's get more about the Vauxhall Monterey. Here's Chris.
I love big. Think big, be big, because this is the big Vauxhall Monterey. Now, it's obviously an Isuzu Trooper that's been rebadged, but that's good because that means it's tough, roomy and proven. It's just recently been to the doctors and the diagnosis is it suffers some steep depreciation and has very little image. There's lots of load and passenger space. Everything is really chunky, and Isuzu technology is really trouble-free. This is a long-lasting 4x4. The drive is well-mannered but unrefined. It's a little bumpy, but it'll cruise well. But if you want to take it off-road, you've got the thumbs up. Standard on this car, ABS and twin airbags. If you're looking for one of these, find one with a diamond pack on, because you get everything that you could possibly wish for, and some of the extras you normally find in more prestigious cars. Now this has done 55,000 miles. It's an N registration. It'll do approximately 25 miles to the gallon, and if you've got the cash, it'll cost you £9,000.
The Vauxhall Monterey is essentially the same as the Isuzu Trooper, but with different engines. Vauxhall give it a 3.1 turbo diesel or a 3.2 V6 petrol. Insurance ranges from Group 12 to 14, and they were produced between 1994 and 1998. Well, that's car number 2 on this week's Used Car Heaven. It's the Vauxhall Monterey. I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I think it looks let this car down. It's very outdated and boxy now.
It looks old.
It does.
It does, but a better drive.
A better drive than the Nissan.
Yeah, the engine seemed to be far more powerful, more torquey. Going up hills, around town, I can imagine it being an easier drive.
And it's a big car. There's plenty of room in there.
Yep, loads of
It's
space.
the cheapest of the 3. It's £9,000.
That's good.
It's not bad, is it? Considering it was about 25 when it was new.
It's depreciated a lot, which makes it a bargain for me.
Okay, well, we'll take the third car out in part 2 of Used Car Heaven. That will be the Chevy Blazer. Also on the way in part 2, Brad will have more insider tips at the trading post. And that's all in a couple of minutes' time. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Used Car Heaven. On this week's programme, we're looking to find a new 4x4 for Jeremy Thomas. We've already driven the Nissan Terrano and the Vauxhall Monterey, and soon we'll be driving this big yank tank, the Chevy Blazer. Also, Brad will have more insider tips at the trading post. But before that, we need to see what Chris has lined up as the alternative. It's a Subaru Forester, a car with 4-wheel drive capabilities, but is it better to drive on the road than any of these?
This is the Subaru Forester. Cost new £15,000, but you could pick one up for as little as £6,000. It's family sized, it's well equipped, it's good for towing, and it's competitively priced. It should do 28 to 31 miles to the gallon, and you can choose from the engines of a 2-litre, which is straight, or a 2-litre turbo. Now, given Subaru's track record, this will be a big, no-fuss, reliable car. It's been designed on the Impreza chassis, which means it's got incredible grip, but ground clearance is a little bit too low to go off-roading. It's got nice trim, comfy seats and large load capacity. And I did mention Impreza. Underneath here you've got a Boxster engine, which means you've got brisk acceleration. And the turbo version in one of these almost has hot hatch abilities. This is a really beefy 4x4. It's different. It's chunkier than the Volvo V70 Cross Country, and even though ground clearance is quite low, credibility is sky high. Standard on one of these are ABS and airbags. If you can find one with an all-weather pack, you'll also get side airbags included. There's an immobiliser. This is a big no-fuss car. Remember, you can choose from a 2-litre or 2-litre turbo. This new would cost £15,000. It's an R-Edge, and used it'll cost you just $8,995.
Thanks very much, Chris. That's the alternative. It's a Subaru Forester. I mean, it's a sort of bit of a cross car, really.
Hey?
It's one step up from a normal estate car, but not going the full Monty to a big 4x4.
No, not as big as that.
Worth considering, maybe.
Possibly, but a bit too similar to my old Ford Escort,
A bit too similar. Okay. What do you think of this, the Chevy Blazer? An American car, if ever there was one.
Big, brash and American.
We need to drive it. Jump in. Well, Jeremy, I think the third and final 4x4 that we're driving, the Chevy Blazer, is definitely a lot more comfortable and a lot more luxurious, I would say.
Stunningly so. It's like being in a more upmarket car.
Yeah.
You're just sitting here at the moment, apart from your driving position, you think you're driving a car.
It's smooth, it's comfortable, it's refined.
It's great.
Yeah. You've got
I'm
a
surprised.
4 litre V6 engine, yeah?
Yep.
Producing bags of power, 200 brake horsepower or so.
Makes it very drivable.
Silky smooth.
I'm actually quite impressed with it.
Yeah.
It's nice to drive.
We're going up this hill again.
Up this big hill.
It doesn't
No
easily.
problems.
No problem at all.
Whacking great engine. I mean, it's
you felt it. Just use a gallon of fuel. Going up there.
Yeah, I dread to think where the trip meter is on it, so I find out my miles per gallon. But
you've got 4-wheel drive again, obviously.
Yep.
But what you can do with this is you can select it electronically. You can go along and have it working electronically, and if it detects any slippage, you know, if you're on an icy, snowy road, it'll flick it over to 4-wheel drive straight away.
Could be useful in winter around here.
Absolutely. Let's find out more about the Chevy Blazer. Here's Chris.
How can I describe the Chevrolet Blazer? Well, it's big, it's huge, it's gigantic. That's on the plus side. On the downside, it's too big, it's too brash, and it's far too thirsty. Now, don't get me wrong, you get a lot of 4x4 for your money, and I've got to tell you, only the latest models are right-hand drive. It's big and cumbersome. It's not too sharp on corners, and if you were thinking of buying one of these to drive around town, then maybe you'd want to think again. But there is a big plus about the Chevy. It loves the great outdoors. It's got plenty of low-down, mid-range power, so if you get one of these, please, please, take it mud plugging. You'll feel really safe in one of these. It meets all US stringent safety standards and more, and it feels big. The window controllers are big, the radio is big, and above you, you have all these other compartments just to store bits and pieces. I do have to tell you though, the only bit of security you get on one of these is an alarm. So I would advise that you get in contact with Thatchams and get your immobiliser, and for extra peace of mind, maybe have a tracker fitted. The engine is a 4.3 V6. It'll average 19 miles to the gallon. This is a V registration. It's got 28,000 miles on the clock, and it'll cost you 10 grand.
The Chevy Blazer is pure American beef. It's a muscle car with a cracking V6 petrol engine, which unfortunately is very thirsty. Insurance on the Blazer is Group 15. Now, there are very few around on the market, so if you want one, you'll certainly have to search hard to find the right one. They were introduced in 1998 in right-hand drive in the UK, but you'll find earlier left-hand drive examples available. Well, that's the third and final car on this week's Used Car Heaven. It's big, it's brash, it's American, it's the Chevy Blazer.
It's big.
It's a car that grows on you, I think.
It's certainly a car. It's far more car-like than the other two.
Does it offer the sort of accommodation and space that you were after?
I think so, yes.
And the high-up driving position as well. It's not quite as high as the other two, but it's
certainly not as high as the
there.
Monterey, but it's a good position. Visibility's not quite as good, but in terms of overall car-likeness, it's
on the
great.
Downside, it's a thirsty engine.
It is.
But
4
it's
litre.
cheap package, 10 grand for a 30,000 mile V-Reg car like that.
It's very good value for money.
I don't want your final decision just yet, but I think I know where you're going, because before that we need to head off to the trading post. Here's Brad with more insider tips.
This is a Fiesta Zetec 1.6S, 16 valve engine. Whereas a Puma was actually a Fiesta dressed up as a Puma, this is actually a Puma dressed up as a Fiesta. Which means you still get the handling and performance of a Puma in a more standard package. This car comes with standard with some nice, pretty alloy wheels, a bit of a body kit as well. These cars retailed at round about £11,000. Today you can pick one up like this on a 51 plate for round about £8,000. So it's good value for money. Bear in mind, when these cars were actually brought out, there was a free insurance package on this vehicle, used for 12 months. So be aware that a lot of young people may have driven them, so just check the service record, check the tyres, check the cars in good order before you actually part with your cash.
Thanks, Brad. He'll be back next week here on Used Car Heaven, delving into the real issues in the motoring industry. But on this week's programme, it's decision time. We were looking to find a new car for Jeremy, who had about £90,000 to spend. You wanted a 4x4.
Big off-roader.
We've given you 3 today. Did you like them?
I did. Very impressed with all of them, really.
We won a 3-2-1. What are you putting in third position?
Third It's got to be the Nissan.
Well, I'm not surprised about that, to be honest.
No.
At the start of the day, you said,
Wasn't sure about its looks.
hairdresser's car, you described it as?
I did, I'm afraid.
It's a bit cruel, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
The engine was a big letdown, wasn't it?
That was the biggest thing.
I mean, we've been driving around the hills of Yorkshire today.
It
just
struggled.
didn't want to pull, did it?
It didn't. At one or two points, you just had to change down a gear and push it hard. And you shouldn't expect that from a diesel.
Shouldn't. 12 grand for a T-Reg. It's
A lot of money.
It's pushing out of your budget as well, isn't it?
It certainly is. I couldn't spend 12 grand on it.
All right, that's number 3. Number 2, Vauxhall Monterey.
It was a close call.
Really? This was nearly number 1.
It was nearly number 1.
So why didn't it make number 1 spot?
Its looks.
Yeah, dated, isn't it?
It's dated. It's square.
It's 10, 12 years old technology at the end of the day, this car, isn't it?
That's it. You get inside it, you think you're getting into a truck.
Yeah.
Not a car.
Good engine on it.
It was very nice to drive.
Drove really well.
It did. Up the hills, no problem at all. It's what you'd expect from a diesel.
Would you go for a V6 version of this?
I'd have to think about, possibly.
But again, you're looking at the fuel consumption.
Fuel consumption could be a problem. It's a big, heavy car.
It is. So number 2, which means number 1, the Chevy Blazer.
Yes.
Well, is this a turn up or what, maybe?
It was. Didn't really expect it to be this one.
It's a great package. It really is. You get everything on it, don't you?
You do all the toys. You get into it, it's like getting into a modern car.
It's really smooth, it's refined, it's a good drive actually, isn't it?
It's a big car on big wheels.
A lot of people say, you know, American 4x4s wall you around the bends.
No,
and
it coped very well around here.
V-Reg, 3 years old, cost 20 grand new, 30,000 miles on the clock for 10 grand.
Would you buy a new one?
You wouldn't, would you?
No.
You wouldn't waste your money on that, but
No.
you spend 10 grand on that.
It's a good saving.
Good decision. Jeremy, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's Used Car Heaven. We'll be back at the same time next week. Join us then.